Hello everyone, this is part 18 of What If Naruto Was Betrayed and Planned It All, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Naruto was surprised to see hands wrapped around his sword, stopping it from going more than a few thousand nanometers into Skull's frontal lobe. Fearing that it might not cause enough permanent damage, he tried to push the blade deeper. Zetsu, whose hands were the ones stopping the sword in the first place, laughed. The tree is only just beginning to really grow into the sky. We need to keep you here a while longer, he said before pushing back. Naruto was forced back. His sword fell apart Skull's eye as it went, but leaving the brain with hardly anything more than a scratch. He was even able to look through the torn-apart socket to see Skull's brain form a minuscule scar before protective layers of tissue regrew and the eye rematerialized. As the scar over his mind formed, Skull felt images flying through his mind. He could see the memories flashing past his mind's eye. Memories of his mistakes, of how his own inaction had thrown the world into chaos. He saw Kaguya screaming in agony as her mind broke. He felt himself break again as he felt the pain she did. He saw the madness he planted sprout a dark bud. I thought your brain didn't heal, Naruto said as Skull came to. I said it doesn't regrow, not that it doesn't heal. Skull said. The damage is still there. For example, I find myself unable to express my great displeasure via facial expressions. The damage you have done to my frontal lobe was minuscule, so I am glad, but either way, the damage has impaired my ability to visibly display emotion. So what now? Now I end what I began 2 millennia ago. Everything became heavy as Skull said this, Naruto's chakra pathways shutting down in response to what Skull was doing to hinder their abilities. Skull walked over to Naruto and delivered a heavy punch to his face, sending him to the ground. I've spent 2 millennia on this. You couldn't imagine what I've gone through to get this far. Skull shouted, sending a kick to Naruto's ribs. Pain. Suffering beyond your imagining, he said, punctuating the sentences with a kick. Naruto spat out of his mouth and looked up at him. So you would imprison the world and turn everyone into white Zetsu. And for what? What has all this been for? He shouted, pushing himself to his feet as fast as he could. He tried to deliver a blow to Skull's stomach only to have the fist caught and redirected. Skull then used a roundhouse kick to Naruto's face to send him flying. All of this was to forgive the sins of the past. My sins. The day I let Kaguya eat the fruit, releasing the taint of chakra on this world. The day I gave her my progeny. Everything has been because of my mistakes. But all of them would never even have been sins if I had Keizetsu when I had the chance. What are you talking about? Kurama said that you were older even than him, but you gave Kaguya the fruit from the Shinju. And, did you say progeny? Gave her the fruit. I guarded the damn thing for 4,000 years. I was the first immortal human being to walk this world. And yes, my progeny. I am the father of Hagoromo Otsutsuki, the sage of 6 paths. I am Takizawa Otsutsuki. Skull sent a savage kick to Naruto's ribs. Without your chakra, you are weak. Humanity has become reliant on a taint. The immortality. It was part of that taint. The overload of chakra into the system, and perhaps my own history with the Shinu played a part, created my immortality. And every so often, someone emerges with that flaw in the genetic code. The chakra corrupts their very being until they cannot s. Ever since my son propagated chakra into the world, people suffer under the hand of my wrongdoings. Because of you. Not your son or your wife. You started this madness, Naruto said. Skull laughed. True enough. Naruto forced himself to his feet again, his face and his body heavier than ever. I always thought this was Kaguya. That it was Zetsu and his plan to revive the one whose will he was created from. But it was you. You aren't trying to activate the dream to be reunited with someone you lost. You're actually trying to revive Kaguya. You are well aware of the end game. Aware. I was never some tool of Black Zetsu. I gave him purpose just as Kaguya did after smelting down her brother and turning him into that thing. Yes, but you are a threat to that. I told Zetsu a long time ago we should KU or at least redirect your path. But he figured it would be too soon, making things more difficult. It would seem no difficulty brought by KU would have been worse than this. Everything that's happened, all that I have suffered, was because of you. What gives you the right to ruin everyone else's lives just to correct your own mistakes? Why was my suffering justified? Skull pulled his original sword out of Zetsu's reground arm and held it out to his side. What gives me the right, you ask? I thought that would be mind-numbingly obvious. You exist because of my mistakes. Your life originates from my decision. Therefore, you should have considered yourself lucky that through the correction of my sins, you would even be left alive. But I can't risk leaving you alive anymore. To do so and take such a risk would be an affront to my love. Without any time to dodge, Skull s his sword forward, aiming for Naruto's heart. Naruto tried to move, tried to duck, to dodge, to do anything to avoid this. By his own calculations, he only had 3 clones left in the world, and he was unsure what the results would be with whatever Skull was doing, if he would even connect with those clones. Will the barrier let me incarnate to my clones? If so, will I be able to return here to save my sons? Will I fail? Has everything led up to this? Am I about to S here? As the blade moved through the air, Skull had his own thoughts. His mind moved to his failures and how this moment would see them corrected. Break. Kaguya sat there, holding her sons in her arms. They were so adorable, so small, so fragile, and yet such a massive impact on her as she sat there, crying over them. She was unable to tell if they were of happiness, the joy she felt over the lives she had created right there in her arms, lifting her and her spirits higher than they had been in a long time, or if they were of sadness, the unbearable and crippling pain of looking at them and only remembering the fresh wound that was Takezawa's death. What will you name them? Zetsu said, cleaning his bee and other bodily fluid-soaked arms. She turned to him, feeling hatred for what he once was, yet also love for the same reason. And now, looking at him after he had helped deliver her children, she felt an attachment to this thing which had also become her son. When she had reformed this creation, she had destroyed the old mind. While some of its personality had remained intact, that only served to solidify its loyalty and affection for her. And now its life was as new and important to her as the ones she held so closely to her sea. She looked at the one in her right arm. This one, his name will be Hagoromo. And then she looked at the one on the left. And he will be Hamura. My 2 sons who shall inherit this world and guide it with a steady hand together long after I'm gone. And then she turned again to Zetsu. Zetsu, if something happens to me, watch out for them. Of course, mother. Break. Takezawa opened his eyes, feeling as though they had been closed for a long time, longer than they should or could have been. And yet, he couldn't tell how he felt this, or why. It was as though he was born for the first time. He could feel his name, tingling in his mind. But all else was blank. Empty. Taki, Zawa. He uttered to no one in particular. The sound of his own voice surprised him. He couldn't remember it. It was as new to him as the green around him was. The trees, the grass, all of it. He knew what they were called, but this was the first time he had ever experienced them. He sat up, knowing what he was doing, but as with everything else, experiencing the sensation newly. And then a single sentence came to him, explaining to him why he knew nothing. I am reborn, he said to himself. Break. Takezawa moved down another hallway, splattering the bee of another mercenary all over the walls. He continued only to have a sword plunge through his sea from behind, eliciting a shout of pain. Finally got you, ya bastard. Someone said from behind him. That's the first injury anyone has given me over the past year. Takezawa said before turning around and using his own sword to K the man behind him. He leaned back and let the sword fall back out before the wound closed just as quickly as it had appeared. He then turned back to the wall at the end of the hallway, a door sitting there in the middle of it. After a few more steps, his hand was in the handle and sliding the door open, finally achieving what he had been fighting for. His face turned slightly dark, looking around and seeing the other captured S. He saw the woman he was there for, her sister in her arms as she cried. Yuki, Takezawa said, walking up to her. At first she backed away in terror, afraid at what he might want with her. He rushed to her, gently cupping her face in his hands, focusing her vision on his face. It's me, Yuki. Takezawa. She stopped struggling and looked at him and smiled before clutching at him, wrapping her arm around him. Taki, you came for us. After so long. Please. SSSHH. He hushed her, quietly. It's all right. Please, Taki. Yes. What is it? Anything. Taki, please, Kami. His eyes widened and he backed up. What are you saying? Why? My sister, she begged me to K her. Afterwards, I tried to K myself too, but I can't. I'm not strong enough. Please, K me, she said weakly, sobs racking her body. I can't. After everything, I can't just K you. Please. Everything I've survived through, I don't want any more. Do it, K me. Takizawa sat in silence for a time he couldn't measure. His mind reeled at what she was asking of him. All of this he had done for her, and now she begged him to K her. And then something clicked. He loved her. He would do anything for her. I will do anything to make you happy, my love, he said, before her belly with his sword. He twisted the blade and pulled it upward into the ribcage, dragging a of pain from Yuki's lips as he easily through her internal organs and ended her life. As the light slowly left her eyes, she smiled. Thank you, Taki. And in that instant, Takizawa remembered everything. His mind reverted, everything he knew came back to him. How he was, how he had lost his memory, his wife, everything. He sat there for a moment, clutching his head. And when he slid his eyes open, he looked down at Yuki. He grabbed her head and looked at her calm, smiling face. Lend me your skull, my love, for it shall be my face and my farce. Break. Skull sat in the tree watching Kaguya as she watched their son spar. He watched well from a distance, unable to muster the courage to go to her and tell her he was alive. How could he? He had awoke the day his children had been born, an action he saw as no coincidence. After that, it had been 3 years before Yuki had been taken. A year, he spent tracking her down. And since his memories had returned, it had taken him almost 5 more years to make himself go back. And now he sat there. He had been watching from a distance for another 5 years, watching his children grow to the age of 14 without him. He sat there, pride at what they had grown to be, but hatred for himself at his inaction both filling his sea. Kaguya herself sat there, watching her boys as they trained. It had gotten worse, this hatred for how they reminded her of everything she had lost. She even hated herself for hating them for something she had done. Every day she could feel her heart breaking more. As her life had become more secluded, so too had her mind become that much more fragile. Skull kept watching from his distance, wishing above all else he could make himself go out there and say something. He saw how she was suffering, he saw it all. But how could he do that to them, to just be back one day, alive? He didn't know how to do it, and his fear of what it would do to her kept him away. I'm so sorry, Kaguya, my love. I can see it. I'm no longer lost, and I can see that you are no longer the same. I can see you starting to break. But I can't do anything. I want to, I must, but I can't. I'm so sorry. Kaguya thought she felt something, her ears twitching as she turned to the direction Skull had once been. And all she saw was an empty tree. Break. Kaguya laid in bed that night, Skull watching her sleep from the window. She tossed and turned, clearly stressed. It had been another few years, and Skull felt the resolve inside. It was finally time to reveal himself. All he had to do now was go up to her and say it. And then they would be together again. He would do it tomorrow, after she woke up. Even if she hated him for leaving her alone all those years, it was time to set things right. However, he slid out of the window just before she shot up, screaming in fear and agony. Over the past years, the visions and nightmares had gotten worse. Each one showed her terrible images, things that disgusted her. She had realized a while back that chakra had passed down to her sons, and now it was all she could do to withstand the thoughts of what they would do with it. They wanted her power, they would take her power and K her if need be to further themselves. That was the thought she had constantly tried to fight off. But now she realized she no longer could. She couldn't let the world fall into chaos because of her sons. She needed to do something, anything, to stop them. Break. Skull thrust his sword forward, ready to K Naruto as the blade went, but his blade was stopped prematurely as another body was Kichigai. Why? Naruto asked, seeing his counterpart standing there with a sword through his sea. I know your fears, we share them. We have the same mind, you and I. I can't avenge you if you but you can avenge me. So avenge me. Fill to me the parting glass. Kichigai shouted, plunging his own sword into Skull's sea. Skull laughed. That won't do you too well, remember. Oh, I remember. This sword was built to fight immortals though, just in case you didn't grant me asylum. Kichigai mumbled before sliding up a piece of his sword's handle and pressing a button. The flats of Kichigai's sword sprouted jagged barbs through the release of a mechanism. Try removing it easily now, you cryptica. Kichigai shouted. Skull gripped Kichigai's en and snapped it before tossing the body away and turning back to Naruto. Admirable effort as it was, Kichigai failed to change anything. Naruto braced for the inevitable before screaming in agony. Not from Skull's sword, but all across his body there was an unbearable pain. Skull looked at him in confusion. What are you doing? I haven't even you yet. Suddenly there was a burst of yellow lightning across the area that arced over the ground. It burst again and again in bursts of light. That's not possible, Skull said. They weren't for Naruto, you son of a b. Those clones were for you. Kichigai appeared in the midst of another yellow flash, every bit of the Kyuubi's chakra he could muster into a six-tailed version 2 state, a compressed Bijudama in its mouth and ready to fire. And he was directly above Skull. The sphere fired off, leaving no time for Skull to manually dismantle to chakra making up the sphere, and being too large for the field to immediately stop it. As the explosion held the area apart, Kichigai used his own, rapidly degrading, Biju form to protect Naruto from the force of the attack. For several minutes, the resulting dust storm put everything in darkness. Break. Sasuke used his Susanoo to run up the body of the Kyuubi, Okiai standing next to him within the duel. Get me close and I'll do what damage I can. Okiai shouted over the winds. I'm working on it, Sasuke yelled, see through another tendril that sprouted and tried to stop them. As another tendril shot out to get them, Sasuke moved to see that one down as well. It immediately split off into hundreds of directions to avoid the sword of Sasuke's Susanoo and began entangling its body. Go! Sasuke shouted. Chakra flowed, sending Okiai into the Susanoo's hand before throwing him. Okiai flew through the air, landing next to Madara. He rapidly brought his broadsword down on the Uchiha's head. Madara grabbed the blade between the palms of his hands and stopped it, sending it to the side. I'm sorry, Madara said as his arms moved. I'm not, Black Zetsu said, driving Madara's arm through Okiai's sea. Okiai smirked. Nice try, Paul, but I happen to be one those immortals you've been hearing about. He grabbed Madara's arm and started pulling himself off of it. I know, Zetsu said, his arm up and out through Okiai's end before kicking the immortal into the air. Madara's Susanoo formed, readying to seal Okiai inside the Totsuka sword. Okiai said his final words as the sword drove towards him. Just before the blade made contact with him, an ethereal purple blade flew upward, disrupting Madara's sword's trajectory. Don't forget how outnumbered you are, Sasuke screamed, digging the fingers of his ethereal warrior into the very F of the Kyuubi to climb to Madara's position. And don't you insects dare forget how outclassed you are, Zetsu muttered, flashing through hand seals at a blinding pace. Caution, Grand Flame Flower. A plethora of fireballs appeared in the air, hundreds of them raining down to stop Sasuke. As the fireballs came down, Zetsu gave a dark smirk. It's almost time. Rise, Shinju. The Kyuubi let out a massive and low roar as the bud on its back suddenly shot open, vines and branches expanding outward and firing into the sky. Each vine entangling within themselves and growing ever further upward. The Kyuubi's arms exploded into roots that buried their way into the ground as well as across the battlefield, crashing through the clashing armies. The Bahamut fortress aimed its cannons, firing a concentrated beam of energy through the trunk of the still-growing tree. As the Kyuubi screamed in pain and the tree almost began tipping over, roots and vines grew at rapid paces to reconnect the tree. The fortress ready to fire again, only for the Kyuubi to swing a tail around the regenerating tree and crash into the Bahamut. On the battlefield, Shino looked into the air as the fortress careened out of the sky in an explosion of fire and metal. Son of a b, he mumbled. And in his stunned state, he didn't even feel the blade through his sea. Black Zetsu looked upon the devastation he had wrought before turning to the now fully grown tree, the roots separating from the Kyuubi itself as they each became self-sustaining. He s Madara's hand into the head of the massive tailed beast, its body suddenly being sucked away into him. You are almost free, mother. He's making Madara the Jinchuriki. Sasuke shouted, holding Okiai in the Susanu's arm while doing his best to withstand Zetsu's Kaiten Jutsu. We need to stop him. Okiai felt a substantial weight in his sea as the tree held his gaze. I'm not sure we can. He whispered to himself. And as the Juubi disappeared, Madara's body changed to accommodate the creature. And then he shot up into the sky, towards the moon. Break. The wind and dust settled and sunlight shone through the air again, allowing everything to come back into focus. Naruto lowered his arm, seeing that Kichigai was back to square one with his portion of Kurama's chakra dissipated and locked away again. Skull stood there, the F over his face reforming along with the rest of the right half of his body. There was still the barbed remains of Kichigai's sword still stuck in his sea. Impressive. Skull rasped out, his vocal cords still growing back. But worthless. I wonder what would happen if I dropped the field right now. He looked into the air as the moon shone red with the image of the Rinyu Sharingan reflected on it. Skull started laughing, his teeth spurting as he did so. They say the only true battle is survival. So you lose after all. As Skull let his influence over their chakra fall away, letting the influence of the infinite Tsukuyomi inside, he laughed. While Skull's own immortality and resistance to chakra as a whole left him unaffected, Naruto realized it was time to play his hand. His ace next ace. With his chakra pathways suddenly opened, white fire L across the area. At first it merely stretched out to cover Naruto, Kichigai, Kureo, and Kagari in thin veils of white flame. And then it began taking the shape of an ethereal white warrior. And as that warrior took shape, Naruto stood within its protective area. Golden chakra started filling out its body and increasingly reptilian features took over the armor, the head morphing into that of a fox's as Kurama's chakra was no longer restrained. Not even the Susanoo should protect you. How are you resisting the infinite Tsukuyomi? Skull said in shock, fury, and infinitesimal traces of fear. How are you doing this? Naruto turned his head up and looked him in the eye. Skull became serious and nodded. I understand now, but where did you get those? They were Roku Uzumaki's final gift to the world. Naruto said. And quite possibly, it's salvation. Break. Anko crouched to avoid another S from Kabuto's bone sword. Kabuto himself jumped into the air to dodge Orochimaru's own Kusanagi. Taking an opening, Kabuto was about to send a hail of bone bullets towards Anko only for a massive root to crash through the ceiling. As they all scrambled to move out of the way of falling debris and writhing wood. What the hell was that? Kabuto shouted. Anko stared at the roots as they grew deeper and deeper into the ground, the cave itself being moved around to accommodate the wooden appendages. This is it. The Shin, nativity of a world of trees. Zetsu has activated the infinite Tsukuyomi. What are you talking about? Kabuto asked, emerging from the dust. Oh, so you really were Zetsu's servant? Orochimaru snickered out. He offered you a position in history as a provider for his army and you gave him what he wanted. No questions asked. The infinite Tsukuyomi is a genjutsu that uses the moon to reflect its light across the entire world at the same time, anyone under its gaze. Anko said. The Shin, nativity of a world of trees then connects them to the Shinju so that the user can use their collected chakra at will. You've been played the fool, Kabuto. Used like a tool, she said, dashing behind Kabuto and see through a vine that tried to take him down. It doesn't care who you work with, Kabuto. It's after the world, and you won't be around after it's done to have your footnote in history. Orochimaru said. Kabuto clenched his fists. All my life, I've tried to forge my own idini. To make my own name, my own life. And now, as I'm on the verge of my own life being mine, I was used, just like I've always been used. Tell me, Anko Mitarashi. What? Anko asked. Where do I find the son of AB that used me like this? I think it's time I put him down. Orochimaru hummed in enjoyment. Finally, Kabuto. You're finally cultivating your own path, just as you should have from the beginning. Kabuto looked at him. Orochimaru, what are you? First things first, Kabuto. The light of this genjutsu will last a few minutes, but once it ends and we get to the surface there will be plenty of work to do. Well, then it's a good thing I've got plenty of workers still running around. Break. Flashback. Naruto stood in his office, having only gotten rid of Kichigai minutes ago as he stared through the hole in his office wall and watched his village burn. He saw a path laid out before him, one bathed in an endless sea of peace could wait. And it would wait until he decided there was enough And then he fell over, unconscious and tired from the day. From Kichigai taking over and his eventual return from the brink of madness. Once he opened his eyes, he was walking within the very familiar flooded industrial basement. He wasn't entirely sure where he was going. Kurama was not using any form of mental pull to communicate with him, and he himself had not gone there of his own will. He turned down another corner, feeling something familiar. I feel something. A presence I haven't felt since. He paused, turning to see an easily recognizable figure standing there in his white robes with the black sword at his hip. Hello Naruto. Roku said. Roku. But how? You're S. Roku laughed at Naruto's astonishment. Yes, I am. And I have you to thank for that. Seeing everything that has happened, I'm sorry to have left you to deal with everything yourself. No, you've handled things yourself for a long time. But what about now? What's going on? Well, you have finally gotten rid of Kichigai. It's what I've been waiting for. You've been waiting for this to happen. Not this exact scenario per se, but yes. You see, when I transferred all of my chakra all at once into you, I did it in a way that helped you develop your plan for Kaguya. Not my original intent to say the least, but it served the only purpose it needed. It got rid of my physical form, allowed me to finally and merged our chakra. I'm not really me, just an after shadow left behind much like your parents with their chakra in the seal. I know all that, but why? Well, when I did this, I made sure to give you a tool I felt you would need in the coming war. But it wasn't something I could just give you so long as Kichigai remained a threat that could take over and use that tool. That's why you're here. You have passed the final test, gotten rid of the threat holding you back, and proven yourself worthy of this gift. Or gifts rather. Alright, what gifts? Roku smirked before a section of water on the floor turned to a reflective pane of ice. He gestured for Naruto to give it a look and started laughing at Naruto as he fell backwards in surprise. Like them? Roku asked. Yes, I like them, but it's just so shocking. Imagine how I felt the first time they showed up. They will take some getting used to, but I'm sure you will need them in the coming war. So sure are you. I find your lack of faith disturbing. Say what you will, but I'm sure you will find them invaluable. Especially with recent events. You're suggesting I bring back Hinata. I could. I really could do it. But what about Zetsu? He would know. I could use this as a trump card. Another ace. As great as this is, both as a weapon and a trump card, Shino is going to hate me for this. Anko is going to hate me for this. Hell, I'm going to hate myself. I can't reveal this yet. I'm going to need to keep this secret. It would seem that, for the time being at least, the S will need to stay S. I understand. That must be a hard choice for you. But if you fail to win this war, it won't matter. And if you succeed, there are unlimited possibilities at your disposal. But either way, the choice is yours. Naruto's tone became somber. No, it really isn't. I want to bring her back, but the choice has already been made. Then go. I think your friends are worried about you. And something tells me they should be. Yeah, they should. Now it's time to put an end to this legend. Break. Naruto stood in the semi-lit room that housed the clones, thinking about what needed to be done. Shino would be here soon and he needed his friend to understand. He couldn't keep his oldest friend in the dark. He and Anko both needed to know, but Shino was a good first step. He heard the clanging of the door opening and then the footsteps of his friend walking up behind him. What's up, Naruto? He asked. Hey Shino. Tell me the answer to a question, will you? Do you trust me? No matter what. Of course. Why wouldn't I? Naruto sighed and turned around, showing his friend his eyes. Shino smiled and rushed forward. This is great. With this, we can save Hinata. We can bring back all the people who Madara K. This is. He stopped, noticing that his friend only grew more somber looking as he spoke. You aren't going to use it, are you? Shino said, backing up. No, Naruto said. Shino clenched his fists. Why not? She is our friend and this is our village. But you would leave them as they are. Do you think it's easy for me? Naruto asked in a S tone. Tell me, what would happen if Zetsu knew I had these eyes? Realization came to Shino. You want to use them as weapons during the war. No. I want to use them as last resort should I have no other way of winning. I have every intention of saving everyone, but first, I must finish what others started so long ago. Should I fail to stop Kaguya's resurrection, these will be the only hope left. So then, you've already factored this into all your plans. The same with these clones. Yes. There was a lengthy pause. Naruto, is this such a good idea? Shino asked. What do you mean, Shino? Naruto replied. Everything. These clones. Your plan for the immortals. Your mobilization of orb. And then keeping that from everyone. I'm not pleased about the fact that you haven't used it, and the only reason I haven't killed you for not doing so is because you are my friend and I am trying to trust you. That, and I don't have the reserves to do it myself. Shino, are you willing to trust me until the very end? I have a plan laid out because I have no doubt that certain things are about to happen. And I think that I will use it. Right there at the end of all this. Shino, I have a feeling that the path I walk. He paused and let out a deep sigh. He turned around and walked towards the door but stopped to place his hand on Shino's shoulder. When this all ends, when we finally win, when the world has turned into what you, me, Hinata, Anko, and so many others have dreamt of for so long, it will be in that moment that I will lead my own path, and in that moment, where I led, you cannot follow. Do you understand? Break. Itik walked into the Hokage's office, seeing Naruto and Anaza sitting there. He walked up and sat down in one of the chairs, letting out a heavy sigh. You didn't need to do that, my friend. Naruto said. I know, but I want him to stand a chance. Itachi replied. He looked up to show that one of his eyes were gray and blind. He will be exiled. How can you even be sure there is a point? We will need your Susanoo during the war. Izuna said. Guilt weighs heavily on him. He's made mistakes, but when everything goes wrong, he will do what he's been trying to do for years, the right thing. When it all stars, he'll come back. It's the only right thing left to do. Yes, but what's done is done, Izuna. Naruto interrupted. He can't uninstall the Izanagi from Sasuke's eye. Any debate is pointless now. All we can do is hope that Sasuke actually returns so it's not wasted. However, Itachi, you do know what happens if he does return, right? Should he return and survive the war, I'll have no choice but to end his life. If I don't, Anko and Shino would be only too willing to do it for me. I will have to do it as the leader or look weak. Itachi sighed. I understand. Don't take this the wrong way, but a part of me hopes he survives and you do not. I understand completely, my old friend, but should everything go according to plan, you shouldn't need to really worry. Flashback end. Break. As the light of the infinite Tsukuyomi faded away, Naruto appeared in the battle-torn wasteland in a flash. With his sons and Kichigai at his side, he tossed Skull to the ground and let his limp body lay there. He looked around, displeased but not surprised to see the massive roots spread across the ground with thousands of people hanging from them. His interest was especially piqued to see Sasuke laying on the ground with B seeping from one eye and slightly burned, but otherwise, merely unconscious. It would seem Itachi's investment was not misplaced. Ha mumbled. And then he looked to the source of all this chaos. Kaguya Otsutsuki standing there in front of the tree, Black Zetsu clinging to her sleeve. Skull's body twitched and his head turned to stare forward and see what had been wrought upon the world through his efforts. And then, regardless of the pain it caused him, regardless of the brain damage, he smiled. Yes, Skull rasped out. Welcome back to the world, my beloved. Your most faithful Takizawa has seen to it that you have been revived. He started picking himself up, the last pieces of shattered skull falling from his face. His wavy hair falling down to his mid-back and his face now seen without the skull obstructing view of it. Long ago a monster guarded the sacred fruit. And millennia later, it has finally come full circle for my mistakes to correct themselves. Kaguya looked at Takizawa for a moment, at first unable to recognize him. Her eyes then widened in shock. Tears flowed from her eyes. Taki, is it you? Taki, my sweet Taki, she asked. Black Zetsu said nothing and Naruto remained still as Takizawa walked over to her, a slight limp in his step before the final piece of skin and tissue schooled back together. And within seconds he stood right in front of her. Her hand moved and she cupped his cheek, pulling him closely. It's me, my love. I've missed you so very much. Takezawa said. It's been so very long, according to Zetsu. Yet you haven't aged a day. You look so handsome. Now I am complete. Do not worry. I'm here. I'm so sorry I left you alone for so long. After Zetsu blew up our home, I had no memory, but after I remembered I wanted nothing more than to return. But I was so scared. And then you started to attack our sons. At the time, there was nothing I could do but wait and watch. My own fear kept me from you, but now, I have ravaged nations and traversed time to set things right. To bring you back. Kaguya grabbed his shoulders, pulled him tightly against her and leaned her head into his sea. I'm so glad that after all these years, the visions are showing me something pleasant rather than all the pain. After all the nightmares and all the hatred, I'm finally in a pleasant dream. So that means I can at last finish this. And on a happy note too. What are you saying, Kaguya? You aren't real. Just like all the others. But thank you. No, Kaguya, it's really me. I'm actually he. There was a wave of energy that blasted him backwards across the area. He s his sword into the ground, using it to anchor himself. Naruto used his Susanoo to protect himself and the others around him from the force, using one of the ethereal hands to grab Sasuke. As the energy dissipated, Takezawa got his feet back under him and stared at his wife. Zetsu, tell her I'm real. Zetsu stayed silent, holding no intention of doing anything for Takezawa. Takezawa's fists balled and he clenched his teeth. Zetsu, you traitorous bastard. Break. What's going on up there? Anko asked, panicked by the rumbling earth. Orochimaru snickered. It seems the surface is safe since the final fight has begun. Let's get moving. Break. It would seem not everything went according to plan, Skull. Naruto said. He was half tempted to go ahead and use this to his advantage. Skull was still weak and this seemed to have left him in a daze. But he stood there, deciding to wait and watch. Takezawa's face lit up with an smirk filled with anger and hatred. That is correct, and I bet you are just happy to see it that way. I would be too. Quite the contrary. I'm glad that things have not ended as you hoped, but I am displeased at these results overall. Do not think I don't pity you for this. Break. Anko and the others busted through the earth and stepped onto the ground, ready to fight if need be. Orochimaru looked around. It would seem my summoner is in that direction. He said, pointing towards where he could see the armor of a Susanoo from just above one of the roots. He moved to go towards it but noticed Anko moving elsewhere. Anko moved a few meters away and dropped to her knees, grabbing the Shino's head and holding him close. She began crying as sobs racked her body. Shino, no. Why is it that out of everyone, I had to lose another one of my friends? Why? Orochimaru sighed and placed a hand on her shoulder. Anko. He's gone and there is nothing that can be done now. We must focus our minds to other tasks. Anko rounded on him. No. You bring him back. Revive him. She yelled. You wouldn't want that. Not really. He would feel literally nothing and merely inhabit a shell. Besides, I don't have a body to s. She turned to Kabuto, but he held out his hands to show they were empty. She let out another sob before letting out a guttural growl of pain and anger. Then I'll take him to Naruto. That bastard might not have done anything before, but he no longer has an excuse not to show his hand. Break. Naruto pulled out a large scroll and prepared himself to use it, but before anyone could react, there was loud screaming that drew Naruto's and everyone else's attention. Anko. So you were able to avoid the moon's light. Naruto mused. Wait, why are you with Kabuto, and what are you carrying? Anko then landed in front of Naruto, hunched over for a moment. Anko, I'll worry about Kabuto later, but what are you carrying? He asked. Naruto, you promised we wouldn't lose anyone else. She replied, much to Naruto's surprise, flooding him with fear at her meaning. Now it's time you fix this. She yelled, turning to him with a tear-stained face. Naruto looked at Shino's body and became stone-faced. Skull, we have yet another thing to add to the cost of your mission. Anko, give him to me. He said, done asking questions. He took Shino from her and straightened his back. The air seemed to explode as the ground caved from the sheer force of Naruto's Susanoo expanding and rapidly growing into its full body form. The hands grabbed Anko, Takezawa, and the others, taking him up with him. He sighed and activated a seal on his arm, using the Haraishin to create a massive flash of light that engulfed the area. Once the light faded, hundreds of new people stood there, the clones Naruto had kept in a zoo. Kabuto, Orochimaru, I have no doubt you have some zombies left to help, bring them here and have them cover our temporary withdrawal. Naruto said. Kabuto and Orochimaru nodded as they focused on their individual Edo Tensei. He then looked at the hundreds of clones. All of you, your purpose is to preserve the life of this world. Fulfill that purpose now and destroy the woman before us. He then looked down at Kaguya and shocked both her and Zetsu as his eyes then changed with a rippling pattern played over the orbs. The Rinnegan. These eyes being the only reason his Susanoo kept out the light and kept him awake with any others in his range. The thing that had made Anko and Shino angry, that he had not used his gift from Roku to bring Hinata back from the S. He had been afraid that using it to do so would cancel it as a tactical weapon. He knew he was right since Skull would have ended him much sooner had he known, but it changed nothing. Mother, we need to stop him. Zetsu said in panic. Naruto's face grew feral and angry as he grew a ravenous smirk, Kei Kaguya Otsutsuki. A split second later and his shroud took off into the air. Kaguya moved to try and attack Naruto directly, but the clones moved into her path, some of them with dragon wings and disfigured, reptilian bee to stop her from simply flying over them. And then they began to chant. Don't interfere. The words rang repeatedly and overlapping as each clone chanted the words, leaving Kaguya in a stunned silence for a split second. Regaining her senses, a rift in the air opened as she decided to avoid these annoyances. However, before she could move through, one of the clones grabbed hold of her robes, a Sharingan twisting around his eyes as black fire torrented from his eyes, trying to engulf Kaguya. Before she could stop the flames, the blaze branched off to surround her and fill her spatial tear before bouncing back and hitting her in the back. She was taken aback and severely burned across before quickly absorbing the chakra, regenerating her wounded body and cloak. She quickly see down the clone but turned to see the fire burning within the rift she had opened, refusing her entry as it absorbed oxygen to fill the space between dimensions that she so freely used. The hole closed, but she knew it would take time for the lack of physical matter to fully disperse the flames. Her attention back was Zetsu's calls to her attention as sharp branches tried to enter and destroy her, a clone controlling the growth from the ground. She easily glided between the wooden weapons but was forced to take further action when loud claps like thunder signaled a beam, like the fires of a sun focused into a stream no wider than a pin, aimed at her head and fired from the eyes of another Uchiha clone. She twisted her body just enough to avoid the beam, though it disintegrated all in its path, including the branches and much of her flowing hair. She then held out her hand, launching a spear made of bone that impaled the beam-firing clone between his eyes, turning the body to ash. Break. Naruto's shroud was moving further, but he knew he couldn't run forever. He quickly stopped and lowered them all to the ground, needing to set everything up. What's the plan, boy? Orochimaru asked. We can't keep running forever. Eventually she will catch up to us. I know, Naruto said. Anko, hold him, he said, passing her Shino's body. I have to do something very important now. He sat down and looked at Sasuke who seemed to be muttering in his sleep. He placed his hand on his head and used a seal to merge their mindscapes. He opened his eyes to a rather strange sight. An old man hovering in the air above several truth-seeking balls. His pale red hair, Rinnegan, horns, and white robe added helped Naruto identify the man. The Sage of Six Paths. The man looked up from Sasuke and at Naruto, Sasuke following his sight and turning to the one he once considered a brother. Very nice of you to join us, Lord Azucage. Hagoromo said. I would normally say that it's an honor to meet my ancestor, let alone you in particular, but something tells me this is the grandmother of all Deus Ex Machina situations. Get to the point, Naruto said. The sage sighed. I am here to give you power you are going to need if you want to seal my mother away like my brother and I did so long ago, as I have already explained to this young descendant of mine. Naruto nodded. Then it would seem I am not needed here. This shocked Hagoromo. You have planned for many things, young Uzumaki, including those eyes which were a surprise even to me. But do not think that means you can simply beat her. Without my power, she can't be sealed away again. Naruto rounded on the man as his own mindscape began to materialize, Kurama forming behind him. And which of us said anything about my intention to reseal your mother? I plan on doing what you should have done long ago, had your emotions not clouded your judgment. I'm not going to seal the broad because I have every intention of killing her. The sage's face grew grim. I see. And how do you intend on doing that? I'll admit my brother and I could have killed her, but you are still far from powerful enough to do that. Even if you are the incarnation of my younger son. I suspected as much. Being your son's remanifestation that is. But I find your lack of faith disturbing. The sage waved his hand over the water, showing an image of the clones fighting Kaguya. Gone 10 minutes and half of them are already gone. And your mother doesn't look too bad for wear. I suspected such results. Why show me this? Naruto asked. Obviously they are your more important cards, yet you are unconcerned with them being played, clearly not being enough. Hagoromo asked. I didn't want to play these cards, they are far from my strongest. I have yet to play my final ace, old man. The one that will tip the scales in my own favor, rather than your mother's. And what card would that be? Naruto sighed and turned to Kurama. Are you ready, Kurama? You do realize that there is no going back, right? Kurama nodded. I realized that the day I told you might even be possible. Do it, and come what may, we did this to save the world. Naruto nodded. Should you be destroyed, what is left of the world will remember your S. I'll make sure of that. Now, this will most likely hurt. He lifted his shirt, revealing the seal on his belly. His hand laid in the center and glowed with a black energy, forcing 8 small seals to appear, one at each of the symbols branching from the main one. As each appeared, so too did larger versions to appear around Kurama and show spectral forms of the other tailed beasts, their eyes hollow and S. It didn't take long for chakra to gather and reconstruct their forms to certain degrees, but they are mindless and soulless. Prey that leaves you in control. Hagoromo tried to ask what Naruto meant, but realization dawned on him as the spectral Biju overlapped Kurama, beginning to merge with him. You're turning him into a new Juubi, with you as the shell to make the form hold. He said in surprise. Very astute, now stay silent. All at once, the mindscape was filled with Naruto's screams of agony and Kurama's own roars of the same. While Naruto's most significant change at the moment was his hair becoming longer and wilder, Kurama's were more drastic and agonizing. The pain transcended the seal, forcing Naruto to withstand the pain of each rearranging molecule in Kurama's body. Kurama's own tails remained at the same number, but all but one changed, each now resembling a tail of each of the Biju. However, each tail, along with the fur all over Kurama's body which became wild and prickly, turned a pure white. The skin on the first tail, the fire of the second, the shell plating on the third, the fur and spines of the fourth and fifth, the slime of the sixth, the whip-like seventh, and the tentacle of the eighth. His fangs and claws lengthened, and grew sharper as his body moved into the last and most excruciating change. Kurama's skull cracked and split, the top pulling back from the area close to the jaw and giving his eye sockets room to move closer together. As the eye sockets merged, the eyes were separate momentarily, forcing the new socket to accommodate 2 eyes and distort before they were forced together into a single sphere. The new eye glowed, pure black dominating the sclera before hundreds of ripples of crimson splayed across the eye. Those ripples rested with 5 being visible along the orb with 3 white magatama floating on the 3 inner rings. His Rinnegan looks different, Hagoromo observed. Naruto nodded. It's the added and, therefore, increased human element. The sealing arrays that bind them and keep this stable until it is complete. All of it coming together. But this will not be enough to beat your mother. I have calculated that I will need much more to even rival her power, let alone equal it. What will you need? I'll need the tree. Now then, are you ready, old friend? Certainly that wasn't enough to put you down. Kurama laughed and looked up at him. Let's kick some A. I was hoping you would say that. He then turned around. What will you do, Sasuke? Sasuke took a moment to compose himself. I'm going to help you however I can. Even if it kills me. Naruto smirked. Good to hear. It's time we got to work. If you fail to kill her, that will be on your head. Humanity will fall because you refuse to seal her. Old man, it might very well be my decision that leads to humanity's fall, but it will be on your head for not killing her the first time around. But I can't fail. If I fail it won't matter because nothing will be left. The only thing that has an outcome is success. So, I will finish what you started. Everything faded away and Naruto opened his eyes. Break. One of the clones backed up. He was the last one left and their Kaguya stood in front of him. He was tired and didn't have enough to go on much longer. He was out of options. He then used his left hand to ell off his right arm. Back off. I'm armed, with an arm. Kaguya paid him no attention other than enough to send an all-K ash bone into the clone's forehead, turning him to ash. Before she could react, the ground rocked with tremors. Energy surged through the air. Mother, if I didn't know better I'd say that was the Juubi. Break. Naruto stood up, Sasuke waking up and doing the same. Naruto's F had become a pale gray. His forehead having sprouted 2 horns. His hair merely grew wilder. While Naruto and Sasuke each had 9 truth-seeking balls floating behind them, Naruto had a 10th at the back of his right hand. Sasuke, instead, had one of his eyes in the form of a 6 Magatama Rinnegan. Naruto's eyes each had a Rinnegan with the form of his Mangekyo Sharingan sitting within the innermost ring of his eyes. What now? Takezawa asked. Naruto took Shino's body and laid it in front of him. I have prepared for this day to degrees no one could have comprehended. So let my cards at last fall, he said as he took a large scroll and opened it. It suddenly opened to reveal hundreds of sealing arrays. From each array extended another scroll and even more seals. Thousands of B rested on the scrolls as they stopped expanding. He flashed a hand sign and glowed with chakra. I have no room for error here. None. And therefore, I must discard all self-doubt and all self-hope. 3 flashes of light signaled 3 of Naruto's shadow clones appearing next to him. Kichigai's eyes widened. Naruto, those are your lifelines. You'll be. You can't use them now. 1. I have no choice. I have to do things right. His clones formed the same hand sign he was holding and spoke as he spoke. It took me a very long time to gather all of these criminals and be. Edo Tensei. Each body glowed as a massive array spread across miles in every direction. The seal swallowed Shino, and as everything finished, so too did every single body and person over the warzone. He readied every person who he had just gathered and each person that he already had within his purview. Orochimaru expressed his sentiments from before to Naruto on using his friend with that jutsu, but he was ignored. Thousands of coffins sprouted from the ground and just as suddenly opened to reveal just as many reanimated shinobi. Even the old ones he already had were there, the entire Uchiha clan and so many others. As each one stood there, reanimated Azu shinobi, old enemies, and others. Even Jiraiya and Tsunade stood not too far away, though they were clearly not given free will. Shino and Hinata stood at Naruto's sides. The moment the cracks along their B sealed over, they came to their consciousness. They looked around and slowly realized what was happening. Naruto? Hinata asked. Hey, Hinata, Naruto said with a sad smile. It's good to see you again. Sirai's on the battlefield. And you brought me back like this? Shino asked. That is correct, Naruto said. Have you finally revealed? Yes, I have, Naruto said, turning towards everyone. Father, Kureo said. What would you have us do? Kagari nodded, hoping to play a role in his father's grand design. Naruto smirked at them both. The part 1 have for you applies to many. I hope you don't mind cramped spaces, because the next part of my plan calls for something more than what I am now. Orochimaru, I leave Tsunade and Jiraiya under yours and Kabuto's command. Sasuke, you will be fighting as I direct you. Everyone else. Naruto lifted his shirt and his seal glowed. The black lines formed chains that shot out and quickly wrapped around most everyone on the field. Shino, Kureo, Anko, Kagari, and Hinata were wrapped in the chains also, but the ones Naruto had named along with Takezawa and Kichigai were left untouched. The seal suddenly turned into a writhing vortex as the chains started to retract. What's going on, Naruto? Hinata asked. Naruto smirked. We are going to battle much more powerful than we ever are apart. Light flashed and the area was instantly as desolate as it was before. The others turned to Naruto as he groaned in pain and doubled over. He spat out B. Are you alright, boy? Orochimaru asked. Naruto's voice sounded as though others were overlapping it as he spoke. Never felt better. I know what I need to do. A L in space opened up in front of the small group, Kaguya emerging from it. Sasuke stepped in, standing between her and Naruto. Whatever it is you need to do, you had better do quickly then. Naruto nodded. By me time, Just a little more. All of you. I'll return soon to finish this. He disappeared in a flash, reappearing at the roots of the new Shinju. His hands rested on the bark and it felt as though the tree itself was vibrating, humming with life. And with a simple mental command, he merged with the roots. Break. Kaguya tried to jump through space again to follow Naruto, however, a massive black sword in the shape of a double helix stood between her and the portal she had opened. Sasuke held the sword aloft, ready to fight her. You think you can stop Mother, boy? Black Zetsu asked. If I can't, the least I can do is stall you too. Sasuke said. His Susanoo formed around him, an ethereal fist coming down to crush her. She merely sidestepped it before flying a few feet into the air. The ground suddenly changed into magma as they were transported to a new dimension. They were clearly in some sort of cavern that flowed with the boiling rock. Most were able to move in time to cling to the walls of stone, but Tsunade's zombie form was incapable of escaping and, despite any regeneration there might have been, sank and was swallowed up. You persist too long after your own defeat. Come then, warrior, and have your resolution. Orochimaru sent a barrage of kunai flying at Kaguya, happy to see Tsunade go, but unhappy that he hadn't been the one to do it either time. A snake flew from his sleeve and bit Kaguya's wrist as she deflected the blades. Black Zetsu chuckled before destroying the snake and getting rid of it. Kichigai used a Futenjutsu to cool and solidify a large area of magma, running along to new surface towards the woman. Yes, I've never felt more alive. Let every dimension you take us through intensify my meaning. He leapt into the air and tried to deliver a spinning kick to Kaguya's head. He was blocked by her forearm. She tried to swat him away but he twisted around and planted the bottom of his other foot into her sternum. The momentum sent him away but left Kaguya slightly stunned. Jiraiya was above her in an instant, raising gun in hand. The sphere was shoved into her head, but was absorbed before any damage was done. Bones shot from Kaguya's back and impaled the zombie in multiple areas before his body was turned to ash and blew away in the heated convection wind produced by the lava. Takezawa, standing in one of the hands of Sasuke's Susanoo, looked on in sadness before leaping forward. His sword impaled Kaguya through the shoulder before he himself was in the stomach by an ash bone. Where others would have turned to dust, the chakra didn't affect his body. Kaguya let out a gasp of surprise when Takezawa punched her in the face. Why must these apparitions torment me now in such a way? Kaguya asked herself. Her face wrinkled in anger and hatred for her own mind's deception. Suddenly the world changed again, everyone miles in the air above a desert wasteland where the ground was in the form of small pyramids. The only one not instantly falling was Kaguya, but the harsh difference in normal gravity and that of this world had her slowly falling as well. A portal took her to the ground where she strained to keep standing as the others fell. Sasuke's Susanoo formed and its armor wrapped everyone up to protect them, though they had to brace for the jarring landing as the Susanoo hit the ground. Even the ethereal warrior was having trouble picking itself up off the ground. The strain forced Sasuke to disperse of the construct and let everyone fall to the ground themselves. Though Kaguya struggled, she held up her hand and sent a bone spear flying at Kichigai. Sasuke used his Susanoo to wield his double helix blade and block the spear. Regardless of the strain on his body and eyes, he reformed the armored level of his Susanoo and charged Kaguya with the sword. Massive bones formed from her hands and blocked the sword, each trying to turn the other object to dust but neither taking effect. Sasuke's truth-seeking balls moved forward and fired off at Kaguya. She disengaged their crossing swords and managed to backstep, if only slightly, to keep out of the line of fire as the spheres hit the ground. A single truth-seeking ball formed in each of her hands, one turning into her own sword of Nunoboko and the other taking the form of a disc-shaped shield that floated behind her hand. Their swords clashed but the Susanoo's other fist crashed towards her. She used the shield to block the fist. They were instantly at a stalemate before Orochimaru came running at her from the side. Of course he could. He didn't feel pain and didn't care that his muscles tore themselves apart to keep him moving. She realized that if she didn't move quickly she was going to get hit again eventually. She opened a portal, ready to abandon him there until later as she disengaged and left. Sasuke locked eyes on the portal as she passed through. His Rinnegan's ability to transport objects and people forcing the portal to stay open. Move. Everyone follow her. Sasuke shouted, keeping it open long enough for them to go through and then transporting himself through. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.